Back at the beginning of 2019, I started a series called Underrated PSVR Games, where in each episode I picked out 5 different games that I wanted to shed light on. Flash forward to now, and we're at the 10th episode of Underrated PSVR Games, meaning after this episode I will have covered 50 different PSVR games. I didn't know how far I would go with the series, but thanks to the great feedback from all of you each episode and my enjoyment of making the series, here we are. So without further ado, here are 5 more underrated PSVR games. Battlezone holds a special place in my heart as it was literally the first VR game I ever played. Several months before the PSVR release, GameStop was holding a public demo of the headset, and upon starting up Battlezone, I was instantly sold on the headset. I even have an old video on this channel where I show footage of me playing it. Battlezone was one of the best games back when the PSVR launched, but 5 years later, it appears that many new users have missed out on it. To put things short, Battlezone is a tank combat game where you go across a randomly generated board of levels to reach the end and save the world. While going across the board, you'll have to complete many objectives, while also upgrading your gear and purchasing new weapons. And where the game really shines is when you're playing online with up to 4 players. Some of my favorite PSVR moments over the past few years are when I've gotten together with some friends for a good old match of Battlezone. I would highly recommend this game to anyone who owns a PSVR. I've always had an interest in story-driven games, with games like those in the Uncharted series being some of my favorite games of all time. But bringing a story-driven game to VR has many challenges and areas of potential that I feel haven't been explored enough. But Red Matter is a prime example of how to do a story-driven game in VR. Red Matter is described by the developers as a story-driven adventure puzzle game, and I think it fits that description very well. You play as an agent in space that has to investigate a Volgravian base and uncover a secret research project. But along the way you'll encounter many obstacles in your path and strange supernatural events. Red Matter has some great puzzles, atmosphere, and chilling moments. Now this game eventually did extremely well on Oculus Quest, but I feel that it never got enough attention on PSVR, likely due to it releasing close to other games such as Beat Saber and Borderlands 2 VR. So if anything that I just said is of interest to you, buy Red Matter. Final Assault is an action strategy game that puts you into the position of a commander on the battlefield. You'll be placing troops all over the battlefield in an attempt to overthrow the enemy and destroy their base. I had reviewed Final Assault back when it first came out in the first few months of 2020 and loved the game, but I hadn't really played it since then. So when I launched it again for this video to record a few minutes of footage, I was shocked when I had to stop myself from playing so I could finish making this video. Final Assault offers exciting non-stop action, tough AI opponents, and a great gameplay loop where being strategic with what troops you place onto the field matters. If you're even slightly into strategy games, you need to check out Final Assault. Out of every game in this series, this pick stretches the boundaries for what an underrated PSVR game is the most. I think one of the most underrated PSVR games is actually part of the DLC for Resident Evil 7. Now obviously Resident Evil 7 isn't anywhere close to being an underrated PSVR game, as over 1 million people have played it in VR. But within the Banned Footage Volume 1 DLC is a mode called Nightmare that could literally be a game in itself. I've only seen a few people talk about this mode in recent years, but it's a mode fully playable in VR where you're trapped in the Baker Mansion's basement and have to survive until dawn. There are 5 different waves of enemies where you'll have to fight dozens of infected along with Jack Baker himself, who's the one who trapped you in the basement in the first place. During each wave you'll be able to collect currency from machines in the basement, which you can then use to purchase guns, items, and permanent upgrades for that attempt. You can also unlock other parts of the basement, giving you more room to fight enemies, as well as other areas to collect currency from. It's an extremely intense and fun game mode that never slows down, and it has some great replayability as you can unlock new guns, items, and perks for the upcoming attempts. If you somehow missed out on this Nightmare mode, spend a few dollars on the Banned Footage Volume 1 DLC or buy the Season Pass, as there's a lot of great content on there. This is honestly a game I thought I used previously, to the point where I went through all 9 episodes of the series again. But to my surprise, I've never put Zing the Land Beyond in the series. This is a game I try to mention any chance I get. I made a review of the game, it's in my top 20, and I'll always recommend it to other PSVR users. Zing the Land Beyond is a relaxing puzzle game that takes place in the afterlife, where you'll go to several different areas to solve puzzles and learn about people's final moments. Zing is some of the best puzzle design, graphics, and music I've ever seen in gaming. Though I think the main reason this game has stuck with me for so long is the world and atmosphere. The game gives me this zen feeling, and it's a world I find myself wanting to come back to again and again. I could just go on forever about Zing. Every mechanic and design choice works perfectly together, and on top of that it has a cheap price tag. So go play Zing. Once again, those were another 5 underrated PSVR games. But for now, I think I'm gonna have to put this series to rest, as to be honest, I've scratched the bottom of the barrel when it comes to underrated PSVR games. And going any further would probably stretch the definition of underrated too far. Though I'm happy with my final picks, as I think I saved some of the best games for last, and I would highly recommend you play the games on this list if you haven't already. I hope everyone enjoyed this series, and maybe I'll bring it back in a few years once the library builds up some more. Red Matter is described by the developer.